What's up? I'm Jacob Litzo, your Elixir Mentor, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Elixir Mentor Podcast. This is where we discuss everything related to Elixir, from interviews with enthusiasts, pioneers in the community, to innovative projects and libraries shaping Elixir's future. Today, I'm excited to have Benjamin Schultzer, a senior engineer who is building a real-time database observability tool for Ecto and Phoenix LiveView. Benjamin, welcome to the show. Can you
Thank you so much.
just start off, maybe give us a little bit of your background and kind of where you started in the tech world and where you are today?
Thank you so much, Jacob. It's very exciting to be here and talk about my project DB Advisor and where I come from. So I've like I first really got into programming in 2016 when I joined my brother in a little startup venture called Nomad Rental. Before that, we've done some open source together. But the Nomad Rental was like our bigger thing. It was a service. It was a place. It's still out there. Nomadrental.com. You can find service apartments in Southeast Asia and South America. The whole idea was to cater to digital nomads. They're moving from place to place. We unfortunately had to retire that project, and I ended up finding myself working in a tech startup. I had to relocate to Toronto, joining IntelliSpark, where we were trying to solve the whole thing about K-12 schools and the teachers not being able to share information very well. It's spread out in Google Sheets and different information systems all across different vendors. So we tried to we built this product where we put all the information in one place. So teachers and counselors across a student could share their information and make student success a team sport. So I was there for the better part of 4 years before I ended up changing job again to now work at the Score, which is a bigger Elixir shop. For what it's worth, I've been doing Elixir since 2016. So I'm pretty well versed in the ecosystem. I try to do a lot of open source too, and contribute to Phoenix LiveView. But today I really want to talk about DB Advisor, which is I built it based on my experience working in especially edtech, where we had to deal with so many different vendors, and also we had to deal with the different clients having different impact in our database. So some clients query might be fast versus other, and it was really hard to figure out which client it would be affecting without monitoring it. And we were very lucky with Ecto that it already ships with the telemetry data. So we actually have everything in there that we need for observability. We just don't really have a great way to inspect that. We could, there's a lot of tools out there. You could use Datadog. You could use App Signal. There's a lot of ways that you can send this data and then look into it. But what is really not there is something where you can have it in your own database, not having to have a third party having this data, and especially if you're dealing with sensitive stuff. For example, in the school system, you have to follow HIPAA. You have to follow a lot of regulation. You can't just share all this information.
I don't want to cut you off, but can we step back or pause for just a second? Can you explain what real-time database observability actually is first?
Totally. So real-time database observability is basically like a way for you to watch each query as they come in. So like with telemetry, we in Ecto itself, we have the real-time capabilities because like every time you execute a query, it will send out a telemetry event where it says how long the query took, what table it came from, and a bunch of metadata that you can look at, like what params and if these how these params were both when we send them to the database and also before like you cast them. So you actually you have a lot of data, so there's a lot of things that you can look at. And this happens in real time. Um, and what dbVisor does is that it helps you store that data in your database. In this case, it's Postgres, but we are planning to expand out to all the adapters there's in Ecto. But right now it's just Postgres. But so we store that in a table for you to look at in a dashboard where you can see that in real time. And all this happens by leveraging Phoenix LiveView and pops up, so we can broadcast these changes to the dashboard as they happen. So anywhere in your app, when you perform an Ecto query, there will be created a telemetry event, and we will catch that with a handler and then save that event to your database in a table and display that in the dashboard.
What is the importance of having the visibility of like database queries, live connections, and then like performance metrics? Why is that something like me as a developer? Why should I care about that stuff?
That's a really good question. Like for me, I like to be able to inspect my system in real time so that I can just follow. Yeah, of course, you want to have monitoring too, but sometimes you're developing and being able to just have that dashboard open so you can follow the flow query in real time is really helpful to investigate issues.
What kind of issues would it help me identify in maybe like your current what current features do you have in dbVisor that if I were to use it, first of all, how do I integrate it with my project? And then how do I see the real-time dashboard or query tables?
So that's a really good question. So we've been trying to make dbVisor as easiest to integrate as possible. So what you really have to do, I'm sure that everybody's familiar with Open Web and all that, and LiveView dashboard, where you just put in in your router. The same is true for dbVisor. The only thing you actually need is to put the the live dashboard in your router, and then the live dashboard would find all your schemas and find all your repos automatically. You don't have to configure anything. And then it will display all your schemas. Actually, it's built around schemas. So like if you, there's some really interesting thing you can do around this is like, if you have like something like an Ecto enum, because it's built via schemas, we know the values of the enum. So when you are in dbVisor and you inspect the record, let's say you're developing and you want to change the record, you can do that too, and you get the values from the enum, so you can see which value a specific column can be. So the value proposition here is really like you can inspect things in your database in real time. That means like even if you have other developers on your team, you will see those changes they make to the database in real time. It would show up. It would be broadcasted out. So you just get everything as it happens.
That's nice. So if you have a bottleneck somewhere, you would see the speed of specific queries through your dashboard.
Yeah, we list like it's very similar to like when you develop in your terminal, you can see the query and the time and all that. We have something very similar where we will show the timing of the query as they come in, and you can filter all those queries by time. Right now, you're able to filter from between 100 and 300 milliseconds. And you might ask yourself, why is that? Why are those numbers important? And 300 milliseconds is important because that is kind of the limit of how slow a page should be. Because if you go over 300 milliseconds, the human eye would register that. So we will feel like the page is slow.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, not all pages gonna be that fast. Some pages you're gonna have slow pages, but like I feel like it's very important to understand the physical limits you have.
Yeah,
especially
when you have
working with Elixir.
And when you have slow loading pages, like sometimes you have a lot of data you have to process. That's where UX design comes in, right? That's where you might have skeleton views, little loading GIFs, and something that the user knows work is happening, right? It's not just a broken app.
Exactly, and those are the things that we can do to mitigate the requirements. But like we also, as engineers, we want to make sure that we're not we haven't made a slow query, so we want to be able to inspect that. Or if we see one, we want to make sure we can answer the question: why is this query slow? Is there something we're doing wrong? And can we do something better? And in the live dashboard, we have a lot of tools that will help you identify and figure out. We have an interactive stack trace, which means like when you see the stack trace, you can see where the query is coming from, and all the links you're clicking on will take you to the source code on GitHub for the right version. So let's say that something is coming from Elixir or some other dependency. You click on that link, it will take you to the right version that your app is using, which is helpful because then you can see the code visually. Oh, this is where it comes from. Is there something here? Is that bug? And it will also work for your own code if you have a place where you're linking to the source code.
So when you see like a really slow query, what kind of debugging steps will you normally take when you're trying to like figure out, is it a database issue? Is it the way I'm writing my query? Is it Ecto? Is it this library? How do you like to approach that?
So the only really thing you can do is that you have to you run explain, and we provide like a one-click explain, or you could write the explain yourself. There's a little console, so you can just execute arbitrary SQL. But for all the telemetric data, we preserve the parents and the query, so there's a one-click explain. So it will just show, and then you can investigate why from the explain why is my query slow, and that might be because there's a scan of the whole table. There might be missing indexes and all that. A lot of these things, for a newcomer, it can be very intimidating. And I know, like now that I'm sitting talking about this, for me, I've been working with this a lot, so it's less intimidating, and I might be overlooking a lot of things that for a newcomer they don't know anything about.
Mm-hmm.
And we can go really deep in databases, because databases in the end is as any other software, and you will have hardware limitation, which meaning like if we have to go to the disk, that would be slower than memory. If we're having if our data is too big to fit in memory or cache, it will be slower. So like when we're talking about performance, there's different levels. But usually for newcomers, the first level they're going to be looking at, also because they probably don't have a lot of data to begin with. It's mostly just table scans. Are there full table scans? Do we miss an index here that we can leverage? These things about like, are there too much data? Like, is the data too big to fit in memory or cache? It's usually something you do when you have a lot of data and you have a really big problem, right?
Well, I
It's
think
usually not something that new people would experience so much of. I'm
I
sorry,
think
what did you say?
I was going to say I think a big problem too is, especially with new developers, you're usually working in like a local host environment, and so you don't have a lot of data in your database, and you're probably accidentally querying all your data all the time, and you don't actually think about the performance side of things because nothing's in production and you don't have users all around the world yet, right? So
Exactly.
so that's also like server location and nodes, like how you distribute your app is a big consideration as well. Now, is your tool something that you would benefit from in production as well?
That's what it actually built for. Because
Okay.
like I really dislike that we had like so. Depending on your setup, you might have to roll your password in your database all the time, which meaning as a developer, like after a certain kind of maybe a week or whatever, oh, you have to update the password you're using to accessing the database, or some places you have to SSH into a node for you to access the database. So it's I'm trying we're trying with DBvisor to make it way more developer friendly, but also secure. And secure in that way that like you wouldn't need to SSH into your box for them to have to investigate and do these changes. You could completely control that in your app and completely decide like if you're using like let's say most people using auth to provide some kind of auth to authenticate your user. That might be GitHub, Google, whatever. Like that I feel like that's pretty standard.
Hmm.
So you're able to set that up on your app and have control over who has access to the database without giving them actually access to the physical database, like in the node. So you can separate that completely. So you can control that in your app without like giving everybody production access to the server.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
All the password to the database. So there's no password sharing. Like you in control of access. Which like because there's so many different ways to get access, I kind of prefer to saying like the only access is through the app and we control the app
Hmm.
instead of VPNs and stuff like that.
Right. Which I feel like is how it always should be, right? Or ideally, at least.
100%,
Yeah.
100%, because like it's our app, and that's like that's your bread and butter, right? Like your user doesn't really care about your server or your database and all that. They care about what they use. So your developers should dog feed themselves and use the app too for that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I feel like a lot of people overlook how important keeping your data close and not just handing it off to random analytics servers and things like that too, because your user base, they might not know it or care, but you are in control of sensitive data that they have on your platform too.
100%, 100%. There's a lot to think about, and with increasing regulation from the EU and the states, we I feel we're gonna see more of this. Like we have to be accountable.
Hmm.
Like like and with the technology today, we can deal with that locally. Like it's the database is fast enough. We have like partitioning. We can have all these great things in full text search without having to render that out.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. Now, um, DB Visor, you integrated it with Ecto specifically, right? So you're automatically
Yeah.
scanning for Ecto schemas. What kind of did you run into any hardships or anything, or was it like relatively easy to integrate? What can you talk about, like the development dirt with integrating into Ecto?
So a lot of things like Ecto and as a lot of things in Elixir, like the libraries are of a very, very high standard. So it's rarely you run into an issue per se. It might just be some missing feature. I had to um, add some missing feature in Ecto to be able to, if you do like if you want to have some changes coming back, for example, like let's say you delete a record, you can return that from the database, so you can update the stuff because like things can change in the database versus what you have in your app when you do update and all that. The record, you can have something in the database, maybe it generates something weird stuff. So you want to be able to get the right value back on a delete, and we usually do that with the returning function. And if you pass returning true, it will return all the columns for your schema. And that didn't really exist for delete. We had that for insert and update, but not delete. So I had to contribute to that, and also had to make sure that that we always put the source field in the telemetry data, because for some queries we weren't putting the right source field, and the source field in this case is the table name. So that would be nil in some of the metrics. So those are kind of the things that I ran into, but those are small things. Like those are small PR, small feature things where like it was just missing. It was just overlooked. Not that it was a deal breaker in any way.
Well, and it's pretty awesome that you're just able to contribute to an open source project and add a useful feature.
Exactly, and that's actually also why I decided to build this around Ecto, because it makes it easier for, like, let's say that people have a different database. To be able to use DB Visor with a different database, they just have to build an adapter, and then it's all done. They don't have to think about anything else. There's no special things that would have to be committed upstream in DB Visor to get it to work.
So as long as Ecto supports the database that you're using, DB Visor is good to go?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I could do Postgres, I could use MongoDB, and it would be good?
Yeah, if it follows the Ecto adapters, then you all good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because we just look for all the schemas, and then we use Ecto queries to do the hard work, and we also leverage Ecto changelet to do the casting. So like when you put a field, when you change a column value in DB Visor, it will be casted. So you don't have to worry about SQL injections or stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because of Ecto.
So I know we were talking a little bit before we started the stream, and I said that my first guest live stream was Paraxial with Michael. And if you want to get scared about taking an app into production, talk to a security guy. And yeah. I feel like that's like being able to use Ecto. Maybe I'm a little naive with this, but it allows you to rely on safely communicating and moving data between, or fetching and pushing data to a database where you don't really have to worry about writing a bad SQL query.
Yeah. It's like it really has superpower in a good way, because like it makes it you can confidently change things in your schema and casting Ecto queries without having to worry about SQL injections. from your user. But it also have escape hatches, which makes it possible for you to execute raw queries. So like it's the best of both worlds.
Mm-hmm.
So you can put the focus where you really need. So when you build your app, you'll use Ecto queries pretty much everywhere, and you don't have to worry. But when you need to do something that Ecto doesn't really support, then you can just focus on making sure that you do this right, and you not like giving this to your user. Oh, let the user just execute arbitrary queries.
Mm-hmm.
And we do allow developers and people that are using DBadvisor to execute arbitrary queries, but that we also provide people an ability to permit certain queries or not. So like you can configure DBadvisors. We let you put in a MFA, which is a model function attribute, where when you execute an arbitrary query in the console, your MFA would receive the query and the socket, and then you can then match on specific query as you see fit. Like you can even just completely disallow people to use arbitrary queries. So like it's built. DBadvisor is built in a way that you have the most customization as possible. We don't limit you in any way. Like you get the socket, you can see whatever is in the socket. If you have any specific assigns, users, and all that, and then you get all that data. So
yeah, and having that kind of flexibility, I feel like is so important because, well, like you were saying, it might have been before it went live, but you usually start building a product for yourself because you have a need, right? But
yeah,
the second you turn it into a product, people want it for different reasons, or they want other features that you never really thought of. So having that ability to customize and adapt from the beginning gives you a leg up for sure.
oh yeah, and like we're just starting. Like there's a lot of features that we want to add that we don't have, and by just giving people an ability to just execute arbitrary queries, they can still get that information from the database that they need to, like, let's say they want to see all the indexes, they can write a query that show them all the indexes, and it will be rendered as a table. So that is really important for me to make sure that as we're building DBadvisor and people are probably going to request features, like we don't limit them in any way, be that on security or the ability to talk to the database.
Mm-hmm. Now, you also integrated through Phoenix LiveView. So does that mean that your tool works with like tracking like LiveView events and things as well, not just database queries?
So how we tracking stuff right now is via telemetry data.
Mm-hmm.
And
so everything is tied in to that.
Yeah, it's tied to that. Like everything that's talks to the database. We do, like I do want to work a little bit more with having a more idea about a whole request. Like that is the idea in the future, to be able to see all the queries that happen for a specific request.
Okay.
But right now it's just very basic. Just you get to see each individual query. You can and you can see the time it took for them, and then you'll be able to, like, it's all stored in your database, so you can query in that too. You can query the averages and stuff like that. So, but currently we don't really support more than that.
Okay. Well, it's a brand new product. You just made a release, right? Pretty much.
Yeah.
This last week.
Yeah. I'm getting to the point where I want to open up for more people, and also that's why I'm here talking with you, to like tell people about I'm building this thing, and if people are interested, like I did a tweet telling people that they can just DM me I have a private playground where people can go in and see how it works and experience a little bit. You are actually able to also just go on dbvisor.com and then actually buy it and run it today in your application. The only reason why I haven't been so much more vocal is like, with every new project, you're gonna hit a lot of roadblocks in form of bugs and things you want to change and all that. So I haven't really wanted to be super vocal about it. I've shown it to a few people in the community. I've gotten some good feedback, but there's been a lot of stuff that I wanted to get right first.
Yeah, I know you gave me access to the playground. I've played around with it a little bit, but I definitely want to spend a little more time on it. It's pretty cool. And soft launches are usually the smart thing to do with new products, right? You don't want too many new users onboarded at once and then have a major issue or problem.
Yeah, you'll definitely get overwhelmed. Like imagine it came up on Hacker News and then everybody just took a look and they commented, and then instead of spending time making the product better, I will be at Hacker News trying to fix the server or read the comments, and I want to focus the right place.
Or you weren't set up to scale properly, and then you owe like AWS a giant bill at the end of the day.
That is true. But I don't really. That is not my biggest concern because of the runtime. The only thing that I would be concerned is like we are in DigitalOcean. It's like maybe I need to upgrade the droplets a little more. But like I'm not concerned about the runtime being able to.
You would just lose a server if you got too many connections at once.
Yeah. We don't really auto scale. Like I think the only thing I really need is upgrade the RAM.
I'm not an auto scaler either. It scares the crap out of me. And I know like a lot of people's viewpoint on it is like you don't want to miss your moment, but I also don't want a $500,000 auto scaling bill.
Oh, 100%. I'm very old school with this, and I actually the playground when the bigger launch is gonna come, it's gonna be open sourced, so you can actually see how it is to set up dbvisor in a real project.
That's nice. I think open sourcing things is good, and you also build a lot more trust with the community because they see how everything works, right?
Yeah, and I want to be able to like. There's a lot of. I'm usually kind of a guy that skim documentation. I'm trying to look for that one thing that I need to use. Not like I don't want to read all the text, which sometimes shoot myself in the foot because I should have read all the text before just.
I do that all the time, and then you'll waste an hour, and then you finally go back and you actually read everything, and you're like, well, damn, I would have had this fixed in 5 minutes if I just read all the documentation instead of skimming for what I needed.
Yeah. So that's this big pain for me. So that's why I want to put out the repo so people can just see like this is what you need to put in. This is how filtering and permitting different things in your application, and also like how do you protect your dashboard. So that is not just like open to everybody, so that you protect it behind some authentication, right?
Yep, for sure. You got to lock up that route, right?
Yeah, you really do. You really do, because like it is really your database, and like that's why a lot of companies makes it so hard to actually access the database for developers. But it shouldn't really be that. It shouldn't. It should be secure but easy. Like I don't want to have to fiddle with SSH keys and a specific node, and this node might change name, and like don't get me started on Kubernetes clusters and different permissions. I just want to be able to go to the page /dev or whatever it is, and then just click on the little log me in with Google off. And then I just want to be there. Like all this content switching is not for me.
Do you, I'm sure you don't yet, but do you plan to ever have like permission levels? So people can't necessarily delete or edit data, but they have access to read it?
So there you can configure that.
Okay.
You can configure everything like that. If right now things there's redacted right now is treated as read only. So and you can filter stuff out that like let's say there's a column that you only want to show to certain kind of users. You're able to permit you're able to say for this column, you again this is the same MFA that you use permit where you just you can decide if a certain user with this email, then they can see these columns and everybody else can't. And that's actually in the playground. I've used that to build the playground. So right now in the playground, I'm actually the only one who can execute arbitrary queries. Everybody else will get like, insufficient permission.
Okay.
Because they don't have the right email. So all of this is going to be in the open source so people can see examples of how do you protect these things? How do you filter out specific columns? Because like there might be, you don't want to show emails. And right now when you go into users, you can see your own email, but you can't see anybody else's email. That's filtered out.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, data sensitivity is...
Yeah, but I can see everybody. Like when I go in and see the user table, I can see everybody.
Okay.
That's kind of the flexibility and control you have. Like we don't have a like plan to like offer that at a higher level currently because like it's meant for you to have full control. But I'm not gonna say that might not be the case in the future. Like if people have a need and they feel like it's something we should look into, like like please reach out to me and then we'll talk about it and see how we can help you.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. Let's see. So your real-time monitoring, right? Can you set alerts and other things like performance analytic alerts to be aware that problems are happening outside of like a certain window of a threshold or something?
That's a really good question. And currently, no, but that is coming. That is something that I want to build in monitoring and alerts. The idea is because we have so many good things in Phoenix right now. We have there's even an swoosh for emails is included. So the idea is to look for your email module and then use that. So like you don't even have to think to set it up. You could. But then we just look for that, and then we use that to send an email when there's like a specific alert. So that's the idea.
Now, I'm gonna just ask a really dumb question. I think, what are like specific thresholds that you would want alerts for? Like on your daily job, one of your projects is in production. What do you care about as the senior engineer in charge of that platform?
I really care about if people having a performance issue by loading a page. If something takes too long, like slow queries, like let's say you have a query that takes 300 milliseconds, then you're gonna have people experience those issues. So that's why that's why right now you can filter between queries. There's either any query or query there's over 100 milliseconds or over 200, over 300. So those are like where I think that's going to be an issue. And put it this way, like if this is just one query, there's 300 milliseconds. You probably have more than one query when you render a page. So you already have a big problem there. In my point of view.
If only one query is slow and the rest, exactly. I was just gonna follow up that question. How do you know if it's a query issue or a server issue? Like
that is really a good question. So with Deep Advisor, like you can just see the query. you can inspect individual queries, and as we talked about, there's a stack trace. So you can go to, it will show you where in your code, and when you click up it, it's going to open up in GitHub for you, so you can identify which function that comes from.
Okay, so from what I'm understanding right now too, like if all your queries are being like having poor performance and slow, it's probably a server issue versus a query issue.
Yeah.
But if one or only a couple queries are the slow ones, you probably want to look into how you're fetching that data.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways that you can fix these issues. Like one thing is like you can like, it's really hard to say one or the other, because like the query in itself, they can sometimes not be deterministic, because depending on the parameters values, like some queries are slower for some clients than others, and it's the same query that you're running, but given that the data for the client might be different and how much data they have, like then that can change things, because like again, you could be missing indexes that doesn't really change a lot for a client with very little data, but for a client with a lot of data, that can be an issue, because you want to avoid those full table scans.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So it's really not like one silver bullet here. Like you really have to like look at the big picture and look at everything. Look at like, okay, do we have a slow query first? Okay, so if we have a slow query, like what can we do? Like the first thing people would probably do is like, let's just cast this query, right? But the thing is like the query is still going to be slow for the first time, and when the cast is getting cold, because like you don't want to serve old data, so you're introducing a lot of problems there, versus actually just
caching is a very hard thing in of itself too, because you're either over caching because things are slow, or you're under caching and you're not fixing your performance at all.
Exactly. So that's why you really want to see what is it that you're missing with your query. Is an index? Is there something we can do? Is like sometimes it might even be because we haven't normalized our database properly, right? Or like sometimes it's actually because we're doing too many joins, right? Like maybe we shouldn't have so many tables, right? Maybe we can do something. So there's like, it's really an open-ended question, I would say. Like, but being able to just see in your production app, oh, this query, it was slow. Click on the little explain button, trying to see, okay, why was this query slow? It had all these things. Then from there, you can start making effective decisions to how should we fix this. But if you just miss that completely, like if you don't do the explain and realize like how the planner is performing this query, like you really don't have the big picture.
Yeah, I think a big mistake a lot of especially new developers will make too is they just overfetch data. And it's not a problem until it's a problem, right? Until your tables are giant and you start to actually bog down the system. And then, like you were saying, with joiner tables or even just relationships, if you're loading a bunch of embedded data when you don't always need it, you're going to probably see major performance issues.
Yeah, and like we have great tools to actually deal with that just in Ecto. Like,
dude, I love that.
Ecto is so good for that, but then again, we have to be aware of it. Like if you're a new developer, you don't really think about it, because Ecto gives you so much stuff for free.
It
like
does.
There's so many people that have run into this issue about overfetching, right? And that's also something like I feel like in the future DBWiser would be helpful to and even improve by like maybe analyzing all the queries in the request and see like, is there some form of duplication here, and then notify the developer, hey, this, when you load this page, there's a lot of duplication going on. Maybe you should take a look at this.
Yeah. Well, what's a nice built-in thing with Ecto too is when you have a relationship set up, if you don't preload the data, you don't lose any performance, which I think is
Exactly.
that's a huge piece of power you can leverage to speed up your data queries.
Yeah, Ecto is phenomenal. It's they really did a great job there. Like, it's definitely the best ORM I've ever played with and seen. And like, I feel like there's there's so much good stuff you can build on top of that.
For sure. No, that's awesome. What does the future roadmap look like for you with DB Visor? What are you going to be adding in the near future, and what's it look like 5 years from now?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't really know where we're gonna be in 5 years, but there's a ton of stuff that I really want to add in the near future. I wanna try to make it a little bit more. Right now, it's not really mobile friendly, but that's something like I want to look into. So like when you, like, as a developer, you might be on call, and then you're just on your iPhone. Maybe you're away from your computer, or then you just want to take a quick look. And like right now, it's not really like it doesn't really work. Like the styling and all that, this doesn't work for mobile inspection of issues. Um, and of course, we don't support all the things. We don't have any like optimization in form of like let's say you have float, index float, and all that. But there's really good tools out there already that people probably using, like the Phoenix dashboard and Postgres Extra. So like, it's not like, I don't feel like that the need is so big for that to be in DB Visor, because there's other great tools out there. Very long term, like I feel like one thing we really haven't talked about this project is like, it's all web based, and it's not most tools people are using. I feel like a lot of people use Table+. I'm a big user of Table+ too. That's all native, and it's fast, but it's not real time.
Right.
And
I'm a big fan of like data grip, but
yeah,
it's not real time. You're constantly
yeah,
refreshing, and I'm really just using it as a lazy way to make sure my data is the way I want it, right?
yeah, and like a lot of these tools doesn't support inspecting stack traces, which is I think it's
That's
very
huge.
important when you develop stuff, like being able to click on the stack trace and being taken to the code, because like you can have tons of queries, and I've seen this on the Elixir forum. People having problem with slow queries and they don't know where it comes from. Um, so this solves that. Like you can easily find the slow query. You can click explain. You can click on the stack trace. You will know everything.
Yeah, no, I
But
think
yeah,
that is an amazing feature you have.
but longer term, like I could really see us exploring LiveView native to even give like a native experience, like where it's even faster, because like there are limitations to the browser, especially when you have a lot of records. Like let's say you have thousands of inputs and all that. And even I actually had to contribute to Phoenix LiveView because I had some performance issue developing DB Visor, where it would just take too long to render. And it was not because the database was slow. It was the browser in the DOM where it just took too long. And those issues obviously go away when you build native, because you're not dealing with the DOM.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, web development, definitely cross browser. That has taken a lot of my time. Also, just like I have a little datetime picker. I didn't want to introduce any third-party tooling. I kind of like, I see myself as an artisanal coder.
I was gonna say your old school is showing. No.
Yeah, exactly. Because also like like LiveView provides so much from the get-go, so it's really little I need.
Well, I
And
think it's important to think about dependencies before you pull them in. Like, yeah, it can make your life easier in the short term, but it's also another code base you don't really have that much control of.
Yeah, and you will have to audit all that, like you have to think about supply chain issues, like you pull in the npm library, and someday that author disappear and somebody else use that
Yep.
package and put some a crypto miner or something like that, or something even worse.
Yep. Well,
Like it's the Wild West over there.
it really is. And I always talk about this example because it baffles me that it exists. But if you grab the Postgres image straight from Docker, there's a Trojan on it if you use the default password and username.
Oh, I didn't even know that. That's crazy.
And it's been a thing for like years. Now, maybe if it was fixed in the last month or so, it's fixed. But yes, so the reason I discovered it, if you Google it, you'll find information on it. But the reason I discovered it is I spun up a development project that I didn't really care about, dev server, like a $5 a month droplet. And all of a sudden, I want to say a couple hours after just running my test instance, I was getting all my alerts, all my thresholds were getting hit. Like 90% of my resources were being used. And wow. It was, I believe it's probably a crypto miner stealing my resources, but it is in the Postgres image.
Wow, that's crazy.
And it's wild to me that exists and is a problem and got into the code base.
Wow. Yeah, that is crazy, because also like that's one thing I've done with DBWise is like everything is really artisanal. Like I install Postgres manually on the server and all that. I don't. The only place we rely on the image is actually in the GitHub action.
Okay.
Where it doesn't really matter, because that's GitHub's problem.
Yeah.
So, but well, yeah, dude, that's crazy.
When GitHub first released their actions, do you remember they had a bunch of people spinning up crypto miners on their actions? They found a vulnerability, and it took GitHub quite a while. They were footing the bill for someone to make a lot of money with their mining off their resources.
Yeah, it's like it's such a good point. Like again, also I feel like that's something new developers won't necessarily learn, because like it's so easy to just put something together without understanding the magnitude of what you're actually doing, and the danger you can do. Like it's feels like that history of rhythms, because I remember when I was a kid and was playing video games and all that, I didn't really know what I downloaded, because like people would say in video games, "Oh, download this thing, and it can help you give you stuff."
We got so many.
Then you
viruses.
Just got hacked. Yeah.
So many viruses back then, because we were just willy nilly downloading MP3s and movies and you name it, right?
I know. It's like, and that's why I feel like you gotta own your stack somehow. Like obviously you shouldn't do everything yourself.
Yeah.
But are you able to some kind of verify that what you're using is legit? Like we all use Elixir, Phoenix, and LiveView, and I'm sure we all have been into the code base or in GitHub following what's going on. So we all have like some, this is something we can trust.
But and that's the importance of large open source projects as well, because other people that know more than me, at least on security side of things, are in that code, are contributing, and they're always testing things better than I know how.
Exactly. And I'm not a big system developer, so I wouldn't be very beneficial to look at Postgres code and then figure that out. So
but yeah, vulnerabilities, like being aware of what you're using is super important. And I feel like with new developers, knowing where you are on that Dunning-Kruger curve is important. The
Yeah,
little imposter syndrome slope.
like it's really something I learned throughout programming. It's very it's a humbling experience learning to program and actually learning how much you don't know.
You know,
And till this day, like I've never felt more like it's more, you know, it's more obvious to me today than it was when I started how little I actually know.
oh, same. When I first got in, I was like, oh, this is easy. I could do anything. And then you start, having experience kick you down a little because you'll experience your first like man in the middle attack that you never thought about having to deal with and other things like that. And then when you start to realize how little you know, I think you're on a good path from that point forward.
Yeah, no, that definitely shows character, and it shows that you made some mistakes and you learn from them.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way. Like, and it's really something I love to preach to my fellow developers. Is like, it's so important that we make mistakes.
Hmm.
Like we shouldn't fear breaking stuff, because if we don't break stuff, we're not gonna learn from it. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm sure like a lot of listener and you, like when you were younger, you would take stuff apart, Lego stuff, like things, and you would break stuff, and then you learned, like.
I was really good at taking apart electronics and permanently breaking them and never getting them back
Mm.
together.
Me too. Me too.
That's funny. Well,
Yeah.
we've been on an hour. I think this was an awesome chat, and DB Visor is awesome. It's kind of a tool I never really thought that I needed, and now I know I need it. I think it's an important tool to have in your tool belt, especially when you have any production style apps where you care about their performance, right?
Yeah, like just being able to introspect your database and even change a little thing here and there when you even do development, like because things change. Like,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, I'm excited to watch this project unfold and grow, and I want to hear about all your features that you're releasing. And if you want to get a hold of Benjamin, I have his Twitter handle in the description. I also have dbvisor.com. And do you have an email list?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you can email me at ben@dbvisor.com.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more from you. And how would you connect a standalone React front end to a Phoenix backend in production?
Oh, that's a really good question. So um, I haven't worked so much with React, so I'm not the best at answering that. But
So, I mean, obviously, when you're building in LiveView, everything is out of the box. You're
yeah,
automatically connected to a socket, and you get all your information through the socket channels, right?
yeah,
When you move to another platform like this, you're either going to be hitting API endpoints, so REST endpoints more often, or you'll connect to the socket still, but you have to do a little more work with connecting to sockets to a Phoenix backend. Now, I've never worked with React specifically with a Phoenix backend, but I have had a Vue app that was a PWA, and we had a real-time like DM chat system in there, and we would just connect directly through our chat channel socket. So you connect to the socket, and then you have all your message channels that you would go through.
oh,
So
interesting.
there's probably a React dependency for connecting to Phoenix channels. So I would check that out. And it's hard to give advice without like knowing more specifics about the project, because I think there's a balance with when do you hit an endpoint versus when do you want everything over a socket. So if you're supporting a lot of offline stuff, sockets kind of end up hurting you and making things difficult. But so there's a balance. I don't know. That's a tough one. Do you have anything to add, Ben?
Yeah, like, I think it's like, you kind of have to use the right tool for the job, and sometimes you actually have to use a mix of both. So it really depends on the problem you're trying to solve, right?
Yeah.
Like in DBvisor, the problem that I'm trying to solve is like making the developer experience better and easier, and those kind of things require that you have like real-time abilities, that you can inspect your database either with raw SQL or just your schemas without having to configuring anything upfront. This should be something that you can do when you feel you need to.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like, I have been thinking about making it also easier for people to leverage DBvisor in the same way that we use sockets with just a controller and a REST endpoint. That is a possibility to automatically create a REST endpoint based on your schemas.
Mm.
And then also leverage Ecto in the same way that you're only fetching the data you need, not all of them. So
yeah, for sure.
And then but when you go down that route, React becomes and GraphQL stuff like that becomes a little bit more meaningless, because then you kind of solve the whole thing about always keeping your API up to date and all that, and because it's generated, right? And you don't have to think about it.
Right.
Then, what are you doing then, right? Like, then it's probably just better to just stay in the Phoenix environment and LiveView and all that, and just write your Phoenix component.
Yeah, I mean, really, the only downside to stay with LiveView right now would be offline support.
Yeah, but like the offline support, if I understand that correctly, is like, when you click something, what happens then, right? I think to a certain degree that's a design issue more than a technical issue. Like, it's something we're designing ourselves as engineer when we look at the problem. Like how do we do that? Because like you have a lot of ways to solve these things. Like a lot of things should be based on CSS, where you put a lot of these things in CSS, and
That's
then
true.
The only communication is what you actually need to tell the server. And you also have the local storage in the browser and all that. And I feel like a lot of these frameworks end up hiding all that knowledge.
Yeah.
There because it doesn't expose developers to that.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does is that for new developers, they can move very fast, very quickly. But
my chat with Andrew on our live stream, we talked about LiveView and like the do's and don'ts, and how so many people, when you're new to it, you're not taught to leverage like JS hooks and things for front end animations and toggling divs or whatever you're doing. And it's really important to leverage something that is just UI related completely on the front end in the browser versus hitting your server over a socket to do it with like a handle event or whatever.
Yeah, and there's so much knowledge that as a new person, and if you just alone, like you're not gonna get it right the first time. You'll have to learn all of it eventually. So it will take you years to master that.
I never wanted to get into front end dev, and my dang YouTube channel made me learn it. So yeah, here we are.
It's true, but I think as software engineers and developers, like it's important to understand the different tools, because it is just another tool in your box. And
it is
when
important.
You work with development, you kind of need to know the basic of all of it and know like how the things fit in together.
Yeah, before I started like learning LiveView and CSS and Tailwind, I definitely just didn't care, and I made a lot of assumptions and didn't really understand how they worked. I was like, I'll write the endpoints and all the back end heavy lifting. My front end devs can worry about that, but I think just having a grasp overall makes you a better engineer, even if you are just a back end dev.
Yeah, and I want to be clear and emphasize this. There's nothing bad as a new developer to go in and use React and Vue and all that. I did that too, because like, again, we talked about this, like the only way to learn is by failing and make mistakes that you can learn from. Like because like there's gonna be a point where you're gonna ask yourself, why did I build it like this? And you can't answer that when you're building it, because like the answer would be like, because this is the easiest and best way I know of it. But looking back years later, you can say, oh, I should have done something differently. Maybe I didn't even need all this. Maybe I could do a lot of things with just HTML and CSS and a little sprinkle of JavaScript, right?
Yep, exactly.
But you won't know that.
Anything for clicks. He said the issue he has is dependencies he needs for his front end development work. It's just better with React, so LiveView wasn't a great option. And look, I agree. I think you run into issues like that with every project, and every project's a little different. And so there's no problem just having an Elixir Phoenix API, and you just are changing the way you communicate with your backend a little differently. LiveView, more stuff is out of the box, and you're just automatically connected with sockets. And so now you just have to make a socket service and, just create other services in your React app to communicate with your API.
Yeah, it's so true. There's a lot of different ways that you can solve a problem.
Exactly.
And don't be afraid to try to solve it in a specific way, even though that other people tells you, oh, you shouldn't do that.
Yep, I agree completely.
Because they might even understand your problem. Yeah.
In tech, it's always the popular frameworks that you hear about, right? So everyone thinks that they need to, use like the mean stack or, whatever. They must be using Node.js. They and I think, honestly, I think that's probably one of the reasons Elixir's so slow to be chosen as a framework. Like, it's always kind of an afterthought because they have scalability problems or concurrency issues. And then you hear the stories like Bleacher Report and things like that, where they cut their server costs down by like 99% or something crazy.
Yeah, and that's that is part of the journey.
Yeah.
The part of the journey is like you're building something, and then at some point you're gonna hit a roadblock, and then as engineers, that's what we live for. Like, we live to solve this problem and figure that out. And usually we go in doing that not knowing the problem in its full extent.
Yeah, I always like to tell people, look, if you're building an MVP because you have a great idea, you have a little startup, and you're learning how to code at the same time, there's no problem with that. But probably understand your MVP is just to get you noticed and maybe raise some funding, and you're going to be completely rewriting that app. And that's okay. That's just the life of tech, right?
Yeah, and it's true for so many other things. Like I see a lot of writing code is the same as writing a book. Like, your first draft not going to be the best draft, that's for sure.
Right. Well, how many times do you write code and you go back to it a couple months later and you don't recognize who wrote that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, it's constant. And, that's what I actually like about it. Like, I always know this, like, I write something and I know I can go back to it at a later point and actually improve on it. Because, like, again, you only know what you know.
When you can refactor
that failure to learn,
when you can refactor something and you delete more lines than you add, it's one of my favorite things in software development, I think.
It's a great pleasure. Yeah. I love it so much.
Yeah, me too. All right. Well, thanks again so much, Ben. This was awesome. And guys, follow Benjamin on Twitter. Go to dbvisor, check out his projects. He's a really smart dude, and we'll have to have him back on to talk about dbvisor when you have another iteration and some bigger updates too, because I'm excited to watch this project unfold.
Thank you so much for having me, Jacob. This was amazing. It was an amazing opportunity to share with all of you watching. And I would love to come back to talk more about DB Visor and how it goes. And if anybody out there, when you look at it, please shoot me an email if there's something you have questions about or something you would like to see in the project.
Love it. All right. Well, thank you everyone for whoever has tuned in. We appreciate you and have a good weekend.